So in conspiracy theory philosophy, the main debate between generalists and particularists has been epistemic. Particularists comprise the dominant position and may very well have won this debate, at least on the epistemic front. But for some, the conversation is now shifting to the ethical and political implications of taking conspiracy theories seriously, most obviously in Kassam's work. In his early writings, Kassam argued that conspiracy theorizing involved lots of epistemic vices, but now his recent thinking is shifting away from this epistemological approach to the political function of conspiracy theories. In his recent article this year, Conspiracy Theories, Kassam lays out three approaches to understanding conspiracy theories: epistemic, psychological, and political. Despite holding pretty fast to this epistemic view that conspiracy theories are generally irrational, he concludes that, quote, the narrowly epistemological approach to conspiracy theories makes little sense of conspiracism without the theory. Rather, he argues that conspiracy theories ought to be viewed with a political function, and this function is to express and promote an ideology. Moreover, the ideologies conspiracy theories promote are racist, anti-Semitic, and extremist. This ideological propagandistic function is definitive of conspiracy theories for him. And therefore, he argues, we have excellent grounds to treat the class of anti-Semitic, otherwise racist conspiracy theories dismissively. Kassam also makes a sort of unnecessary move of castigating particularists for what he views as giving succor to such theories. I, along with a small particular, share Kassam's concerns about the use of some conspiracy theories to promote racist and anti-Semitic ends. Obviously, it's just that I don't see this type of conspiracy theory as definitive of all conspiracy theories that he does. So in this paper, I'm going to challenge Kassam's two of his assumptions. So first, I'm going to disagree that racist or anti-Semitic conspiracy theories ought to be treated dismissively as a class, which is surprising to me. This is due in part to the problem of defining racism and due in part to what I call the location problem of conspiracy theories, which is a problem of identifying what is and is not part of the theory. So in response, I suggest we need to be even more particular, so maybe it's regular, about what I'm calling an instance of a theory. Second, I disagree that the only function of conspiracy theories is to promote racist ideology. Instead, I argue that there exists a class of anti-racist conspiracy theories that uncover racist conspiracies and challenge white supremacist ideology. So I'm going to move along as follows. First, I'm going to talk about defining approaches to defining racism. Then I'm going to talk about there's at least three categories that I see. There are probably lots more, but I'm seeing three categories of racist conspiracy theories. And finally, I'm going to talk about this anti-racist function. So as obvious as racism seems to be, there's really no agreement at all in the philosophical literature over what is central or essential to racism. Now, part in the philosophical debate. Now, part of this definitional challenge is what Lawrence Blum calls the location problem. So where exactly is racism primarily located? So there are two major approaches, big general approaches to defining racism: individual and institutional. So individual approaches focus or locate racism in individuals. So individuals are who are racist. And there are three different approaches to this, which is that individuals can be racist in their beliefs, in their attitudes, or in their behaviors. So belief, or these doxastic approaches, argue that racism is a matter of personal beliefs. Attitudinal accounts place racism in a non-cognitive, emotional, or disposition of the individual, because in some cases they do not consciously hold racist beliefs, but nonetheless seem to express racial antipathy or callous indifference. So behavioral accounts locate racism in an act that harms a person, regardless of any underlying attitude or belief. Now, institutional or systematic approaches locate racism in the policies and functions of institutions and systems. In some cases, the institution is racist because of the beliefs or attitudes of the people who create or comprise the institutions. But in other cases, racism is located in the effects of those institutions on racial inequality, regardless of the beliefs or intentions of the members of those institutions. So there are also hybrid approaches which are going to mix these together, but these accounts are still debating primacy, which really comes first. So moreover, I just want to point out that racist is a loaded term, and to use it is to do something political, not just epistemological, ontological, and moral. So labeling something as racist is a conversation stopper. So applying the racist label to some political position is or can be a way of undercutting the moral character of that political opponent. And this happens across the political spectrum. So for example, progressives may argue that border wall policy is racist because the politician arguing for it uses racially charged language, while conservatives may argue that affirmative action is racist because it preferences one racial group over another. Each side uses the racist label to silence the other and paint their position as immoral or without merit. So whether one of these examples is a better or worse application is beside the point. It's really just that the label classifies the other side as morally wrong and without merit. So I think it's important to have some sense of what makes a conspiracy theory racist. And since there are a variety of conceptions of racism, there are probably several possible conceptions of racist conspiracy theories. So what does it mean to call a conspiracy theory racist? Is it harder to define a conspiracy theory as racist? It's harder to define a conspiracy theory as racist than one might assume. I suggest that calling a conspiracy theory racist implies that it has no epistemic or moral merit. And this justifies the stance that the theory ought to be dismissed out of hand, which is Kassan's intention when he's applying this racist label. Labeling some conspiracy theories as racist is obviously warranted, but in some cases the label might be used to dismiss valid concerns. So the first challenge to defining a category of racist conspiracy theories is figuring out what we mean when we refer to a conspiracy theory. So this is what I'm calling a location problem in conspiracy theory. So where exactly do we locate the theory? So many conspiracy theories are nebulous. We may need to become even more particularist, again, or just regular particularist, in relation to the specific instance in which the theory is presented. Sometimes a theory is a full-length book or report, a single sentence, an image, a meme, a like or share. All of these can be considered conspiracy theorizing. So some conspiracy theories exist in multiple forms and change in content throughout history, from instance to instance. So the same general conspiracy theory may be expressed by one person in one instance and be rightly deemed racist, while another person in another instance may offer another version or explanation of the theory that lacks any racist content. So for example, labeling the Great Replacement theory as racist may be accurate in some instances, but not others, because there's different varieties. And other versions of this theory might be racial or anti-Semitic or Islamophobic or xenophobic or nationalistic. So locating the theory is one problem, but locating the racism in the theory is another. So my concern is the challenge of using this disputed term of racist as a modifier to the disputed term of conspiracy theory. So in this next section, I'm going to suggest a path forward. However, I find that none of these conspiracy theories can be dismissed out of hand because they're a member of this racist category or class. But rather, these theories can only be dismissed based on the racist instance of the theory. And in some cases, dismissal still requires an evaluation of the epistemic or moral merits of other instances of the same theory. So first type is an explicit or overt racism. So a conspiracy theory may be considered explicitly or overtly racist insofar as it contains racist propositional content. Though what makes propositional content racist is not entirely clear. Straightforward version of this category is when a proposition contains inferiorizing claims about a particular racialized group. For example, a version of the Great Replacement theory that makes inferiorizing claims about Jews, Muslims, or Latinos. But a less straightforward version of this same category of overt racism is one that expresses an individual's racial antipathy, but may lack any explicit racial propositional content. So this would be like a dog whistle racist conspiracy theory. So for example, somebody with racial antipathy creates a conspiracy theory that hints at the racial inferiority of a particular group, but doesn't explicitly name that group. Maybe a version of the Great Replacement theory that uses sort of xenophobic language. Americans are being replaced by outsiders rather than whites are being replaced by Latinos. So I think it's fair to call this a racist conspiracy theory because of the antipathy of the original conspiracy theorist. But once this theory gets disseminated, the theory may be held as a belief by people who don't hold the same racial antipathy. And now the question is whether the theory, disconnected from the original theorist and their racist beliefs, if it doesn't contain any racist propositional content. but I'll come back to this in the next category. However, a conspiracy theory can certainly still be explicitly racist, even if it was created or shared by a person who does not hold conscious racist beliefs or attitudes. For example, when somebody who claims to not hold racist beliefs wears like a Cleveland, or the formerly known as a Cleveland Indians baseball hat, or somebody that displays like a Confederate flag, it may be that the image is racist without its displayer holding these explicitly racist beliefs. So what's a proper response to this type of theory? So a theory properly defined in this overtly racist category, I think is more easily dismissed prima facie because the nature of explicitly racist propositional content. Explicitly racist conspiracy theories are more justifiably dismissed out of hand because claims regarding racial biological qualities are flatly false. Right? There's no biological basis for race. So these theories are akin to what Keeley calls mature conspiracy theories, theories that have been investigated and debunked, but nonetheless persist. So race science has been debunked. So any proposition that racializes a group and applies a moral claim to racial differentiation should probably be dismissed out of hand for lacking epistemic merit. However, the conspiracy theory location problem presents a challenge to this prima facie dismissal. So one instance of the theory could be offered by a racist person with racist intentions and racist propositional content, but the underlying conspiracy can nonetheless be true. So in this sense, the racially augmented instances of the theory are racist and therefore false, but the underlying claims of conspiracy could still be true. So for example, like the lab leak theory could be offered by one conspiracy theorist with an overt anti-Asian racist language, while another instance argues that one should not trust the Chinese government because of their human rights violations. So one instance of this conspiracy theory is explicitly racist, while the other instance is not. The problem is that the theory may be true, but instances with the racist rationale are false. So the second type would be a racist function. Okay, so this is one that creates or perpetuates racial injustice in society. So this view ignores the intention of the theorist and the existence or lack of explicit racist propositional content. So in this sense, a conspiracy theory may be properly labeled racist if it functions by creating or perpetuating racial injustice in society. So if dog whistle theories don't properly fall in that explicit category, then this one could account for that racism based on the theory, the effects of the theory. So this category of racist conspiracy theory seems to be Kassam's main target, I think. His argument is that conspiracy theories in general are defined by their function, which is spreading extremist anti-Semitic racist ideologies. So the drawback to this category is that an instance of a conspiracy theory can be used to further racist ends. But again, that may not say anything about the truth value of the theory. Conspiracy theories can be true, but nonetheless perpetuate racism. The COVID lab leak theory can and has been used as racist propaganda, but that racist function is really irrelevant to the truth, or its possible truth. It does, of course, warrant a more nuanced approach to taking the theory seriously. So the conspiracy theory location problem pops up here again insofar as defining how the racist function of the conspiracy theory works and who is responsible for that function. The lab leak theory may have origins that are serious attempts at finding the truth. However, some people have taken this theory and used it for racist purposes. So in this way, the theory in general has both racist and non-racist instances and functions. So containing or dismissing a theory based on its racist functions could then be just detrimental to its non-racist truth-seeking functions. So third is what I'm calling a racial conspiracy theory. So this third category can be labeled racist. It needs to include race as a feature of the conspiracy. So the difference between this category and the other two is that racial claims are not always considered racist. And this also depends on what theory of racism you're using in your point of view. So part of this issue involves the question of who can be racist. So some approaches to racism, for example, certain versions of the power plus prejudice model, posit that only white people can be racist because racism requires an imbalance of power plus a racial prejudice. So in this view, a racially prejudiced claim made by a member of a less powerful group toward a member of a more powerful group would not actually constitute racism. So here, racism depends on one's internal states and one's external placement within society. So for example, some Black nationalists have claimed that white people are racially inferior because they have less melanated skin. So this claim might be considered racially prejudiced, but not racist in the P plus P model. So conspiracy theory may be racially prejudiced, but not racist if the theory comes from a non-white person positing the existence of the conspiracy perpetuated by whites based on their racial inferiority. But not all racial conspiracy theories need to involve racial prejudice. So I suggest that there are some theories that posit races as part of the conspiracy that can be considered anti-racist, insofar as they identify racist conspiracies. So racist conspiracies are those conspiracies that seek to create and perpetuate racist outcomes in systems and institutions. So this brings me to my second disagreement with Kassam, that conspiracy theories can only function to spread racist, anti-Semitic, or other extremist ideologies. So I have no objection to Kassam's claim that conspiracy theories can function this way, often do, and are a major contributor to the spread of these sorts of ideologies. But I suggest the existence of anti-racist conspiracy theories demonstrates that conspiracy theories can also function to combat racial injustice and promote anti-racist ideology. So US history, and sorry for the parochialism here, US history is littered with racist conspiracies, and for hundreds of years, this racism is conscious and overt. White people consciously conspired to use their power to oppress Black, Indigenous, and other communities of color in overt, legal, systematic, and cultural ways. In fact, I suggest that white supremacy is maintained, at least in part, through a series of racist conspiracies. For the sake of time, I'm going to have to skip this discussion, but I really want to highlight that this is not just a list. First of all, it's not just it's a short list. It's not all encompassing. And also these are widespread and incredibly devastating to communities of color. And it's a shame that I don't have time to do this. But I think all of these should, and in many cases are considered conspiracies. But I want to give you one main example of an anti-racist conspiracy theory. So the death of 17-year-old Laquan McDonald in Chicago, who was murdered by Officer Jason Van Dyke. So initially, these officers claimed that McDonald was advancing on them with a knife, and his killing was in a self-defense. But in reality, he was walking away from them when he was shot. So members of the local community theorized that the police conspired to cover up the misconduct of the white officer, in part by destroying video evidence from a local restaurant's surveillance camera. That Black community members were accusing a majority white law enforcement agency of a racially motivated crime and cover-up is an example of a conspiracy theory that involves race as a feature. So accusations of racism were thrown around by both sides to dismiss the validity of the position of the other side. So in this situation, as in many others like it, a white contingency accused these Black community members of racism for positing such a theory, since at the time, the community members lacked direct evidence to support the truth of a law enforcement cover-up. This situation highlights the danger of dismissing a racist conspiracy theory because of how and who gets to define racist. So I'd suggest that while this is a racial conspiracy theory, and some people might classify it, at least at the time, as a racist conspiracy theory, I think it had an anti-racist political function. Okay, so I'm thinking Kassam is going to disagree with me here. He may argue that this and the other examples are not conspiracy theories, maybe they're just conspiracy explanations. But I suggest that this and many anti-racist conspiracy theories fit Kassam's critical definition. So in the same paper, Kassam defines conspiracy theories as speculative, amateurist, and self-sealing. So speculative because the theorists rely on circumstantial rather than direct evidence. Amateurish because theorists are not bona fide journalists or government officials or communities of regulators. And self-sealing because the absence of evidence for conspiracy is reinterpreted by the conspiracy theorists as evidence of the conspirators' ingenuity and success in covering their tracks. But the Laquan McDonald racist cover-up theory was at one point speculative and self-sealing. The theorists assumed that the lack of video evidence was evidence for the truth of the conspiracy. And many were convinced of the truth of the conspiracy despite lacking this direct evidence for it. So much of the theorizing was done by amateurs, community members who are not bona fide journalists, officials, or regulators. So maybe Kassam would respond to this or any similar racist, anti-racist conspiracy theory that it's simply too plausible considering how widespread racism is. But I think that's not necessarily a sufficient response for a couple of reasons. What exactly makes an anti-racist theory in this case likely to be true? In the US, law enforcement kills on average 1,000 people a year. And it's incredibly rare for officers to face criminal charges and even rarer for them to be convicted. So for example, over a 13-year period in California, there were 2,000 civilian fatalities during police encounters, only 20 of those instances where an officer was arrested. So that's less than a 1% officer arrest rate. Does this data indicate the unlikeliness of racist law enforcement cover-up conspiracies or the opposite? Okay. So maybe Kassam would not agree that the warranted conspiracy theories I offered meet this epistemic criteria, because they're true. But I suggest that there are unwarranted, implausible anti-racist conspiracy theories that do meet this criteria. So for example, the conspiracy theories that the government planned to kill Blacks through HIV and AIDS, needle exchanges, or COVID vaccines, or that the government intentionally broke the levees during Hurricane Katrina, flooding Black communities. I think these surely have to fit Kassam's critical definition. Kassam's point is that unwarranted conspiracy theories don't really have any epistemic goal anyway. The point of the theories is in their political function, to forward racist propaganda. However, I suggest that some unwarranted conspiracy theories can also function by forwarding anti-racist propaganda and ideology. So Kassam defines conspiracy theories as political propaganda, the point of which is to spread political ideology. And he cites Jason Stanley's analysis of propaganda. But what's funny here is that Stanley has a sort of unique perspective on propaganda, that it's not actually necessarily misleading or false. Propaganda can be positive. So this opens the door to another view of the political function of conspiracy theories as positive propaganda. Likewise, ideology can be used in both a neutral and a pejorative sense, but Kassam is using the term in the neutral sense. He cites Usinski, and I'm going to skip that. Just take a look at it. Now, several how am I doing? 5 minutes. Okay, great. So several sociologists have offered multiple social and political functions of conspiracy theories, particularly coming from Black communities. So J.L. Jackson argues that conspiracy theories may be used to make sense of racial inequalities that are ignored or discussed in race-neutral coded language in a colorblind society. Conspiracy theories are also intended to politicize the Black underclass. He writes, hip-hop artists call on racial paranoia as a kind of lightning rod for politicizing otherwise disaffected Black youth, asking them to wake up, recognize the global conspiracies afoot, and get their urban lives in order. Ethnomusicologist C.L. Keyes suggests that hip-hop conspiracy theories can be connected back to Black oral tradition of legends and myth, and can maintain social cohesion and group solidarity. Travis Gosa argues that hip-hop counterculture uses conspiratorial ideas to challenge racial inequality by expressing and addressing quote, legitimate but complex political grievances in contemporary society. So he argues that conspiracy culture is a form of counter-knowledge, an alternative knowledge system designed to entertain while challenging white-dominated knowledge industries such as academia or the mainstream. None of this is to say that anti-racist conspiracy theories are always providing positive function. For example, Mark Fenster says that conspiracy theories can point to incorrect sources of social problems, thus harming actual social progress. Nonetheless, the positive function of many warranted and unwarranted racist conspiracy theories indicates that one should not dismiss conspiracy theories out of hand, because the theories can uncover racist conspiracies, can bring attention to racial inequality, and have multiple other positive anti-racist functions. So to sum up, we can dismiss out of hand some racist conspiracies that contain explicit racist propositional content, but only in those specific instances, and maybe not all instances of the theory. But we cannot dismiss a conspiracy theory simply because it belongs to a class of racist conspiracy theories. This is how I define it. Racist conspiracy theories exist and are widespread. Excuse me. racist conspiracies exist and are widespread, which means that there needs to be widespread anti-racist conspiracy theorizing. So some of these anti-racist conspiracy theories are warranted, others aren't. Kassam is mistaken that all conspiracy theories function to promote racist ideology. Unwarranted anti-racist conspiracy theories can function by promoting anti-racist ideology.